Welcome back, artists. In the previous video, we covered the magic wand tool to expedite cleanup, and then the eraser tool and how we adjust its radius to get real surgical precision when we're trying to clean up our images. So let's jump ahead. I finished the cleanup, right? So I have my portrait silhouette cleaned up. I zoomed in to get rid of any stray pixels because that clarity, that cleanliness is necessary to suspend the viewer's disbelief and make it look like these two images belong together. I can't have it looking messy, right? So now I want to look of a sort of club vibe. I don't want to just DJ in this grayscale blah background. I want to add some color. But before I do that, I have to finish cleaning up. Erasing is just part of it. Now, if I've got lighting issues, if things look washed out or overly gray, I'm going to go to adjustments. And in fact, adjustments is where I'm going to change the lighting, the brightness, the contrast, and color. So let's get used to that. Images, adjustments. That's where we find all these options. So go to image up here, adjustments, and you'll find brightness, contrast, levels, then hue and saturation and color balance. There's a lot of others and you can play with them, but these four are probably the ones you're going to use the most of. So first, levels. This is an adjustment that allows me to push the lighter areas of an image and the darker areas. So this black square, when pulled, will intensify the darkness, whereas the white will do the opposite, of course. And the gray is sort of those in between, the baseline sort of neutrals, right? So I kind of like the idea of making my background a little less dark and a little more well lit, right? To match me. I could bring down the darkness in my own photo, but there are already some harsh shadows and darkness on my face, and I'm wearing a black suit coat. If I try to match the wall, I could lose even more value. So I'm going to have it meet me instead. Just make some adjustments on that wall. Right? Now let's go to me, for example, and now try brightness and contrast. Now that affects what it sounds like. If I push brightness over, it intensifies like I'm better lit, right? And I probably want to push that up a bit. Contrast pushes the extreme between the lights and the darks, the lightest and the darkest pixels in that layer. Well, you can see you can get too intense where the shadows almost look like burns, right? Or I can bring it down so far that it gets washed out. I want to bump up that contrast a little just because I want it a little brighter. I want I want that contrast to pop a little more because it looks like a crisper, cleaner image. I don't want it so washed out, right? So now let me go to my background again, go to image adjustments. Let's check out hue and saturation. Hue, well, that doesn't seem to be changing much on a gray background, does it? Let's go back to my layer and see what happens. I've got more colors to work with. So now when we change hue, hue stands for colors. Primary, secondary colors, your base colors in the rainbow. It will push the extremes of your colors, drowning them out to those kinds of colors. You can get more blue in your image, for example. And for myself, I like the idea of getting more purple for my club, but this is a bit intense for me. I think I would rather do it by hand, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. I can also change the saturation, which intensifies those colors. The pinks of my cheek get redder, right? My skin goes from like a peach to a red to an orange. It almost like creates like a heat, whereas desaturating it pulls the colors out, almost like soaking it up like a sponge, all right? I don't really know that I want to make too many changes here. So I'm good, but I could trust the adjustments if I have a little more control over them. So with color balance, I can boost my reds, boost my greens and my blues, experiment with combinations to get, say, a more orange look or a more purple one. I'm going to play around with this very carefully, but before I do that, this is a drastic change. So get in the habit of right-click, duplicate layer, and then you can always hide the layer that you've copied beneath it somewhere and just edit this one, because after I've cleaned it, I don't want to make a drastic change, dislike it, can't undo it, and then have to start all over from scratch, okay? So be cautious.